Monsieur Anber.
My brother.
Good evening.
How are you? How are you? How are you?
You seem to be in a great mood there. I'm in the second backup location this evening, not in the regular office, so no background today, but we have a guest coming up in a few moments here in the third edition of Calling Russ Anber. A bit of a slow week in terms of the boxing fights coming up this weekend, so we figured there's something to talk about, especially with last week you were at a local event in Montreal with John Scully, weren't you not, Russ?
Indeed, I was. And, you know, even when there's nothing happening in boxing, there's always something happening in boxing. Okay. So even on a slow week, there's something happening in boxing. But yeah, we were at the Scully and I braved the parking trauma that is downtown Montreal. And we went to the Olympia. Great venue, by the way. You know, it's a great venue for boxing. And sat in and watched, for whatever it's worth, a historic event in the first ever Bridgerweight championship of the world fight.
Not Bridgerweight, it's just Bridgeweight.
No, Bridgerweight.
Oh, we can check, see how much the marketing has worked on the top. Maybe we'll ask the referee who was in the bout for the WBC title, of course, and someone you've known for a very long time, and I've had the pleasure of knowing as well the last 15 years or so. Mr. Mike Griffin, who's been involved in, I don't know, probably, we'll have to even ask him. I would say now at this point, probably in the hundreds of title fights, or near it, I would say.
If it's not title fights, it certainly is fights altogether, and one of the best referees in the world. Bar none, he was the third man in the ring when Joshua suffered his first defeat to Andy Ruiz, and he's been entrusted in major fights all over the world. It's great to have him, and yes, a longtime friend.
You see there, Mike? Is he here with us this evening? You should be there.
There he is. There
it is.
There.
You see him there, Russ?
I do indeed.
Awesome.
So do you know how many title fights, Michael?
No, I don't actually. I don't have the number. I mean, maybe boxrec has it. Somebody has it. It's probably 30, 40 now. I don't know, 30. So in that area, I would guess, for world title fights, you know.
And what about regular fights?
I guess I'm somewhere north of 350. I don't know, maybe more. I don't know. I don't think I'm at 400 yet, but I don't regularly check it. But I you know, they sometimes you get surprised. You turn around and you say, "Oh shit, I'm up there." But you know, I don't really watch it daily or anything. So you know,
I did an interview today, and of course, the guy asked me the same question: how many fights have you been involved with? I have no idea.
Right,
I rely on Matthew to figure that out for me. I'll ask Matthew, and he'll compile it. He'll figure it out for me. I have no idea.
Yeah. Somebody's recording that stuff, I think, you know.
Yeah, boxrec is getting better.
There's some. Yeah, it is. They're actually very good. They're actually very accurate, and they've gone back and even got a lot of guys that were, you know, fought in the days before boxrec. Some of them are not that accurate, I know, from looking at the older guys, but certainly currently, you know, you go anywhere in the world, you do a fight, and you get up the next morning, it's on boxrec, you know, and you can be in the furthest region in the world and where there's no telecast or anything, and somehow, you know, they got you on there. They record it. So yeah, it's pretty impressive now.
Michael, did
you universal?
Did you have the pleasure of meeting and knowing Anibal Miramontes?
Yes.
He was the guy who originally started what was at that time fightfax, right? And
that's right.
They used to have to wait for the commission to send in results. You know, you had to mail in the results.
Right. And they were reliant on the information that came in. And of course, I think if I recall, fightfax charged for the
record,
for the data, right?
Yeah.
So they weren't as universal in boxing. I mean, most of the commissions used them. It was pretty much heavily weighted on the you know, the sanctioning guys and the commissions that were involved with fightfax. Not so much fighters, managers, trainers, etc. They weren't really involved in the fight facts. Now we have a thing where everybody kind of refers to, and the media, of course, refers to boxrec.
Well,
You know,
prior to fight facts, you had to reach into your library and pull out the latest edition of the Ring Record book and go through the Ring Record book, which I still have.
You're always giving up your age when you start talking about the Ring Record book.
Yeah, the Ring Record.
Yeah. You had to wait for that to be published.
Yeah.
So yesterday's fights obviously weren't in it. 6 months ago's fights weren't in it. You know, so you had a guy with a 14-0 record. He was knocked out 7 times this year, and you were still looking at him as a 14-0 guy. So you know, it was a little bit different then.
Yeah, it sure was.
Did you expect Mike to referee a fight that eventually for this Bridgerweight title, the WBC has come up with this new weight class, which some people say makes sense. You know, do you have debates? But in terms of the fight last weekend, what were your thoughts on watching it himself and Rivas having been in the ring with other heavyweights? Do you think overall there's a place for that division in boxing, or do you even not really have an opinion on it and you're just there to referee the fight?
Well, both. It depends if you're asking me officially or just as a boxing guy. I think that officially I don't have an opinion on it. I'm happy to have had the assignment. I think it was wonderful to be, in a way, it's sort of a historical footnote. It was the first Bridgerweight title fight in the history of boxing, and you know I refereed it, so that was I guess something. I thought there was a little bit of irony there, in the sense that we had recently watched the unified cruiserweight champion beat one of the biggest heavyweights competing today only a month ago, and then create a weight in between those two guys as if that was impossible. So the timing of it was kind of ironic, I guess. You know, I mean, you know, we've had light heavyweights in history, the greatest light heavyweights in history, you know, guys like Bob Foster, you know,
Archie Moore.
Step up,
Archie.
right? Yeah, Archie Moore, try and step up and win a heavyweight title.
Roy Jones.
And so far, you know, with the exception being Michael Spinks, of course, the one guy who was able to do that. So we said, okay, that distance is just too big. It's just too big. You can have a great light heavyweight who can't make that step, right? We've never, up to Michael Spinks, we never saw it. You know, without taking any away from Michael, one of the greatest champions in boxing, he met an, you know, past his best before date, Larry Holmes, you know, so wasn't able to repeat against Mike Tyson, who was a smaller heavyweight. So yeah, we always thought that maybe, and then we got in the when the Klitschko's came around, Lennox Lewis, we started to see super big heavyweights, you know, a different, almost like a different kind of class of heavyweights. If you think of guys that, you know, in the fight of the century, Muhammad Ali was 212 pounds. Joe Frazier was 204. Mike Tyson barely ever fought over 200 pounds. Joe Louis was 190 pound heavyweight. You know, Michael Spinks was heavyweight champ. Then we started seeing the likes of, you know, Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko. Lennox Lewis, you know, guys 245, 255, 6'7", 6'6". And then we stepped into this modern day heavyweight division where we're seeing guys like, you know, Deontay at, you know, 6'7", Tyson Fury at 6'9", 280, 278. I mean, you would think there should be a different class, you know, I mean, to pass the threshold of 200 pounds and fight a guy 80 pounds and 6 or 7 inches taller doesn't really seem like a viable thing, right? So we said, okay, if a guy crosses that threshold of 200 pounds, maybe there should be another opportunity for him to vie for a world title. You know, if you cross that, as I say, you cross the 200. And then of course, Oleksandr, you know, I mean, your Russ could tell you better than me because he was there in the corner, but you know, here's a guy crosses that sort of threshold of 200 pounds. And then, you know, the reason for the Bridgerweight division creation was to say, well, that guy should have a chance. You know, if you can't make 200, you're 205. That means now you're facing Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. You're fighting super huge guys. And I think with the exception of, you know, the irony, as I say, was Oleksandr Usyk happened to be in the same month that he was the guy who actually could cross 200 pounds and beat a super big heavyweight. You know, I mean, I don't think that's universal. I don't think there's a lot of guys that at 205 or 210 can get in the ring with a guy 280 and give away 6-7 inches and 60, 70 pounds and beat him. I don't think there's a lot of guys in that category. So I think there's a place for the weight. You know, I think, like I said, the caveat is that we did it in the 1 month where somebody else had already done it. So it kind of makes it seem, but I think there is a place, right? It's heavyweights are bigger. You know, the heavyweights we're looking at today are the primo caneras. You know?
Yeah, but they could fight now. The difference is there was a time when big heavyweights were coming along and you loved fighting them because they couldn't fight. They were slow. They were cumbersome. They weren't even big punchers. You know,
We've made this observation together, Russ, where you say, you know, if you take an Ali, if you took a Joe Frazier, even if you took a Mike Tyson, you know, these guys started fighting. Ali started fighting at 112 pounds. He went to the AAUs in 1955 in Chicago and won as a middleweight at 165 pounds. He won a gold medal in Rome at 175 pounds. So basically, when he fought as a heavyweight, you're talking about a boxer who has fought every single weight class in boxing.
Correct.
He got there as a boxer. What we started to see in the 70s and 80s, and even more in the 90s, was guys walking in a gym at 200 pounds and 20 years old and trying to learn how to box.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had size and they were big, impressive physiques. But, you know, when they got in the ring with a guy who has been boxing as a welterweight, as a super middle, as a middleweight, all the way his career, all the way up the ranks, this guy had to learn skills. You didn't beat those guys with size and power. You beat them because you had the skills. And we had that kind of heavyweight guys that were, as you say, they you know, it was one of the observations of Emmanuel Stewart when he said, you know, when he started working with Vladimir, he was like, these guys don't have basic skills. They don't know how to move their feet. They don't know how to jab. They don't, like, they're big, impressive athletes, but, you know, I mean, we got to start at the beginning with these guys. So yeah, I think that's the difference. I mean, now we're seeing guys that started boxing, had like Oleksandr, you know, impressive amateur careers, went through the weight categories.
Yeah, that's right.
Grew physically as they got older into heavyweights. And then, you know, they were able to combine the power and, you know, of the heavyweight.
So do you think in retrospect, boxing made a mistake by not leaving not doing what Olympic boxing did, leaving the heavyweight division where it was and where it should have been, and created a super heavyweight division? You know, when we look back on it now, because now when you talk about heavyweight champions, it's impossible to be comparing the likes of Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, Joe Louis to the guys. You know, I'm not saying they couldn't have won, but, you know, the size difference was just massive. Boxing wanted to keep that heavyweight division as the pinnacle division, but I think that was legit. I think the idea of keeping the heavyweights as the kings of boxing, not creating a weight class above them. And I just think this from the perspective of tradition, it was probably wiser to stick a weight, Bridgerweight, under heavyweight, rather than rename the heavyweight division, rather than have a guy in a class named something. And I understand it's just semantics, it's just in name, because now heavyweight is actually super heavyweight. But the notion of keeping the tradition, the longevity of saying the heavyweight champion is the king of boxing, I think that was
a legitimate thing. So you call this Bridgerweight weight, which it actually is. It's an accurate description of the weight, but it does keep the heavyweight king as the heavyweight king, which gives you some sort of continuity in the sport, right? So Joe Louis was a heavyweight king. This guy's a heavyweight king. He's not a different class. Joe was the big man, the pinnacle of the boxing world in his day. And today that guy is the man. The lineage follows. He's the heavyweight champ, you know. So I think that was a well-conceived idea, you know.
Yeah. And the Bridgerweight division, actually, the name actually, although it's named after a kid, you know, and I think we all know the history of why it happened, but it's ironic that it's named Bridger in being a bridge between the cruiserweights and the heavyweights. You know, it almost makes sense.
Right. And, you know, exactly. That's why I say it's kind of ironic that it became a Bridgerweight, which is kind of, like as you say, building that bridge between, you know, so we get to keep the iconic, the top man in boxing is still the heavyweight king. That's who he is. You know, I mean, the boxing, the big jewel, the big crown in boxing, that's the heavyweight. That's the big dog, right? So, I mean, you know, I think that's legit, you know. So you know, we've added 2 weights in our lifetime there. You know, cruiser didn't exist, you know, that's a 25-pound spread just in cruiser. And now we're another 25-pound spread. So there's, you know, you're not even in the heavyweights and you've got 50 pounds between light heavyweight.
That's right.
And you know, I mean, it's a shit ton of money. I mean, it's a shit ton of weight, right? I mean, you got, so now we're going another 25 after heavy. You know, you're 75 pounds between a light heavyweight and that heavyweight champ. So, you know, that's a big jump. That's a big jump for men to make, you know. So
yeah, it sure is.
And Russ, if you let me hear, Mike, one of the big heavyweight fights and one of the biggest results and upsets we saw in recent years, you were the third man in the ring. And it's not something we're saying just because you're here with us tonight, but me and Russ talked about the fact that how much the fact that you refereed and the decisions you made of not stopping it too early, stopping it at the right time, and allowing that fight to kind of build in New York City, of course, a few years ago between Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua was really like a major, massive upset fight. And how did you live that moment yourself, being in the ring, knowing that you were going to be involved into at some point, okay, this could turn out to be a massive upset here, and I got to be careful how I go about refereeing this bout?
Well, oddly enough, Matt, you know, none of those things actually go through your head. It's a fight. You prepare. I can honestly say I didn't know. I had seen some of Andy's fight. I knew he had skills and hand speed. You know, 1, 2, and 3, first 3 rounds, there's a big buzz. You know, you go into, Russ will tell you because he's been there too. You know, you go into Madison Square Garden, sold out. You got a heavyweight title fight. There's a lot on the line. So, you know, you're really attentive. Your adrenaline's flowing. You know, you're really focused because the juice gets you focused, right? Because you're there and it's not. You know, when you look at the way the fight started to unfold, I mean, Anthony Joshua did everything right for 3 rounds, even when he knocked Andy down, which I think was like a little bit of shock to Andy, but he was kind of on schedule, I would say. Even right after the knockdown, you'll see he landed like a solid right hand, a perfect punch. He didn't even make a mistake after the knockdown. He just got caught. And, you know, that's heavyweight boxing. He just got caught. And I think there were a lot of assessments done about that fight that were, you know, in retrospect, weren't accurate. They weren't the way I saw the fight. A lot of the analogies, you know. I think a lot of it, and Russ could attest to this, a lot of it was mental on the part of Anthony. There was a huge psychological shift there that happened in the 3rd round. When a fighter is fighting, when he loses composure, when he loses his calm, he starts to use an inordinate amount of energy. You know, if you watch a hockey fight, guys are super conditioned athletes. They can skate for days. They're well conditioned. They get in a fight, but they play hockey relaxed. they fight tense.
Tense.
Yeah.
And in 30 seconds,
They're-
their energy in a fight on the ice is expended. They can't even swing their arms anymore because they're no more relaxed. Once that fight started, they stopped being relaxed. They had shortness of breath. The adrenaline was pumping. Everything was happening. Anthony Joshua was going through that in the third round. He had lost his ability to be relaxed, and he expended everything he had trying to survive in a situation he didn't anticipate himself being in. And, they talk about at the end of the third round, there was a few seconds where I said, walk to me and this and that. Now, a lot what was lost on the television audience, and a lot because of the commentators, was that when Anthony went down, that was 3 minutes. His ass hit the canvas at 3 minutes, the third round. I knew then he was not getting hit again. There was no extension around. There was no letting it off. What I wanted to see was two things. Did he want to continue? That's why I asked for his hands. Did he want to continue? The step didn't mean anything. I wanted to see if he was going to fall before he walked back to his corner, because falling would have caused me to resume the count at 8, which means he would have been counted out. I wanted to make sure he didn't fall walking back to his corner. There was no more time in that round, But what happened in that fight was that if you look at the end of the fight, when it came to the 6th round, Anthony Joshua won the 4th round. He won the 5th round. He got hurt to the body in the 6th round because he had spent himself fighting tense. He had stopped being relaxed in the ring, and he had spent himself. And if you watch the last knockdown of that fight, he never got hit. No punch touched him. The knockdown that he spit his mouthpiece out, he did not get hit. Nothing solid hit him. He went down on his knee, his legs were gone. When he walked back to the corner, he was looking for time. He knew he had no legs. He needed a second to catch his breath. He wanted to be restored. He thought he'd spit out his mouthpiece. The corner would get the mouthpiece. He gets some time. It was, he was Diego Corrales. He was desperate and trying to continue. I didn't fault him for that. I think that's what a fighter should do. He was reaching down his baggage, he was doing whatever he could to get it to get back in that fight. But as I say, I think that, from my perspective, doing the fight, it was like a deep breath after. And I'll tell you a funny story. I went out for a beer. We were in New York. I went out for a beer with a couple of friends. And I remember saying to them, I just started to breathe. And I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? It was as shocking to me as to anybody else what I had just experienced. and I said to myself, wow, that was something, And I said, it's kind of off the cuff. I just said, we're going to make a documentary about that fight within 6 months. And, sure enough, they called me back, say, we want to film a documentary for this. I was like, yeah, I think I knew that. It was one of those things. And the funny thing was, I was in the cheap hotel, not Anthony's hotel. I was in the cheap hotel with Andy. Andy was in my hotel. So I saw him the next morning at breakfast. So I went up and he came up to me and gave me a hug. And I said, congratulations, champ. That was a hell of a performance. You did a great job. And he said to me, and while we were hugging, he kind of whispered in my ear, and he said, I wanted that next knockdown. And I said to him, yeah, that's why I stopped it. I knew you did. You wanted to ice him, but I said it was over.
Matthew,
he wanted the emphatic because he could see that the guy had no more legs. He knew. And that's what it was. It was Anthony had spent himself with that, Russ will tell you this, it's a nervous energy. It comes in. You're not fighting calm anymore. You're not fighting relaxed. Heart rate's way up, breathing's shallow. You're just trying to get out. But that, so you were ready for 12 rounds, but now you don't have 12 rounds in you anymore. You got,
we saw that, Russ.
The 6th round.
That nervous energy, we saw it, Russ, a little bit in the Usyk fight as well, not to the same extent, but you feel kind of that Joshua, maybe the pressure sometimes, and he loses a lot of energy, seems mostly with nervous energy. Would you agree with that, Russ?
It's not just Joshua. Anybody who stays tense in a fight. That's why you can look, whenever we talk about conditioning for an athlete, for a fighter, You know, you got to be in shape. You got to do your road work. You got to do it. And then you get old timers who have been out of boxing for 5 years. They come back to the gym for a week and they can spar 8 rounds the following week, not because they're in any better shape. They just know how to go 8 rounds. You know, they just know how to do it.
They know how to relax in the ring.
Yeah.
They know how to relax in the ring. And like I said, I mean, until Joshua got caught, he was pretty relaxed dude. He was doing everything right. I mean, he was going to plan. He was, you know, the big punches came in the 3rd round. The guy went down. It looked like it was, you know, another day at the office until he got wobbled. And then panic set in. And I think that's what it was panic. You know,
I don't think he was expecting that. It's funny, Matt, you asked Mike about the pressure. I'm going to tell you a fight in which he was under more pressure than you could possibly imagine, you know, than the heavyweight championship of the world. And that's when he refereed Arturo Gatti here in Montreal. And that's
I knew that was coming out.
That's the best. That's the best one of all time.
Yeah, Yeah, I never prayed so much during a fight in my life, even when I was in. But I mean, it was that was, and you know, that was just a showcase for Arturo in Montreal. You know, he was fighting a guy,
Joe Hutchinson,
who was a tough guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was kind of a, you know, I think that was an ESPN. It was ESPN live fight in a sold out Molson Center. I must have the record for attendance in the Molson Center because I think it only lasted for that fight. So I must have got the record. But you know, it was it was a Bell Center shortly after that. But so that was a kind of a crazy scenario. Again, you know, sometimes stuff gets missed, right? So there was early in that fight in the 2nd round, if I recall, you know, their heads came together. Their heads came together actually sideways. You know, they were both swinging like this. Joe Hutchinson kept his head low. Arturo went down doing it, but they came side of their head to side of their head. It was nobody's fault. There was a lot of clashes ahead. Arturo stepped back, and you know, I'll just say this as a referee, and almost invariably, if a fighter puts his glove to his eye and tests if he's cut, that's invariably a butt. No fighter, when they get ripped a beautiful left hook and it tears their eye open, they don't check if they're cut. They know they're cut and they don't do that signal. They never check. They just keep fighting, as they know that was a point. So when the heads come together, fighter automatically wants to know, did that cut me?
Good point.
And Arturo did that. And he looked to me. Immediately he looked at me and he was touching his eye, but his eye swelled up like an egg almost immediately, but it didn't open. So he backed up in his corner, still testing the cut, because he could feel it. I guess he could feel the swelling. And I didn't call anything. There's no call on a clash of heads. It's a clash of heads. You know, you say, watch your heads, it continues, right? And, you know, a southpaw orthodox guy, I mean, invariably that's going to happen during the fight. You know, I mean, almost never when you get a southpaw fighting orthodox guy, do you not get the heads coming together. Anyway, he backed in his corner, and then Hutchinson hit him with a right hand and split his eye open, which was already quite swollen. It already ballooned out. He was like a little egg on his eyelid, and Hutchinson opened it with a right hand. And that was the thing. So immediately I stopped it. I called the doctor. And of course, there was a little bit of a problem there because Lou Duva got in the ring. And it's funny, you'll appreciate this, Russ. I have never given that instruction in a pre-fight. You've heard my pre-fight instructions a million times. I've never told a trainer that I will make the call and you stay out of the ring. Before that fight, I said to Lou, Duva, I said, I'll make the call in the ring. You stay out of the ring. That was in the pre-fight instructions, only to Arturo.
Wow.
I told him that. And sure enough, I made the call. He got in the ring, made another call, checked the eye, played with the eye. And, you know, Doc Mounier was there. He went to that corner. That was my inexperience. because Arturo should have been looked at by the doctor in the neutral corner. That was my inexperience at the time. I had the doctor go to his corner, where Lou Duva controlled all the action.
Right.
So, Lou's experience and everything, he knew what to do, what to say. He was already protesting the fight. He was already calling everything. So, I remember that kind of. So what happened was, it was actually caused by a punch, which was terrible for me. I mean, this is the worst scenario. This guy had, I was in my own hometown in a sold out Molson Center where 100% of the people were cheering for Arturo. I ruled it a punch in the first round. And the cut is as bad as the Klitschko cut against Lennox Lewis. I'm saying I've never seen a cut that
terrible,
bad.
Terrible.
I'm like, what the fuck how am I going to get out of this? Right? Like, you're going to have to stop this fight and give Joe Hutchinson a TKO win. There's nothing else you can do here, man. And, thank God for Doc Lunia, because he let the fight go. And Arturo was winning the fight. And I have to tell you, my own feeling about cuts. I'm generally not inclined to stop the fight on a cut unless I get a hard recommendation from a doctor. Most of the time fighters get cut. They understand, a lot of these guys are not going to have a follow-up modeling career. They know they're going to get marks during the fight. Once they've been cut, generally you're not, unless the guy, you're not saving him from anything further. He doesn't care if it's 7 stitches or 9. He understands the run of this. Losing the fight is more important to him. Those kind of things. You're right. So he's not generally, and I'm not concerned about cut if it's just cosmetic effect. Okay. Sometimes it's very ugly for the audience to watch. It's a blood sport. We had that in the Bridgerweight title. Sometimes it's not that attractive for people watching. It seems brutal, but that's not the inclination I have. If a fighter is not losing a fight and he's not being hurt by punches he can't see, the cut is less important to me than how he's fighting and how well he's protecting himself. Okay. So, if a guy's badly cut and he's getting hit a lot, the cut is hindering his ability to protect himself. Okay, now we got to do something. We got to get him out of there. Okay, because he's not fighting at 100%. He has a significant disadvantage in the fight now. In this fight, actually, Arturo was winning the fight. He was continuing to win the fight after he was cut. The odd thing was that their heads did come together again. This one cut under his other eye, clearly caused by a butt. So here was my dilemma. If I stop this fight because of cuts, I have to assess which cut I'm stopping it for. If I stop it for the cut on his left eye, he loses. But if I'm stopping it for the cut on his right eye, we go to the scorecards and he wins. Right? So it's like this crazy thing. So I just started praying for a knockout. I didn't care who knocked out. Just somebody knocked somebody out so I don't have to get him. This is not going to come back on me. It was a knockout, man. I don't know.
Did you ever get
and then actually, that fight?
Or no, for any fight. Did you recall like a fight, like, because now you're saying like you were afraid for what the reaction would have been and stuff. Did it ever happen that you got really bad backlash of people taking it personally of a fight that you refereed in, or have people been pretty professional knowing that you're the referee and you're in the best interest of the fighters, or has it been?
I honestly, I'm trying to think of a fight. I've had, I used to always say this, there's always 2 referees in the ring because the winner always had a good referee and the loser, the referee stunk. So, everybody's not happy with the ref all the time, but that's not my job. But no, actually, I haven't had any real problems like that. I think that, you make the calls in the ring, and I think there's a sense that fighters have I think that if they feel that there's a lack of neutrality, if they feel like you're against them, if they feel like you're angry with them, or and I've even instructed other referees, you have to be careful even with the way you warn a fighter. He doesn't foul me. I haven't been hit low. He hit that guy low. I just saw it. So it's not a personal thing, I just want it to be sort of, and I think if both fighters feel like you're doing that, you're not going to have that thing. And in the fight, we were talking about the Bridgerweight fight, there was a point where I took a point in the 12th round, actually, very late in the fight, took a point from Oscar Rivas, which he probably may or may not. I did the same thing to Vladimir Klitschko once against Brian Jennings in the 10th round for the same offense, for holding. And the reason I take that point is because the place of the referee is, it's a fight, right? So my job is really just to make sure nobody goes outside the rules to gain an unfair advantage. So I'm trying to keep it fair, right? I just want to keep it fair. I don't want to decide in this. My primary job is to protect you. I'm there for both of you. I'm going to make sure you don't get in trouble. And other than that, I'm going to make sure nobody gains an advantage. So if you watch the fight I just did, there were low blows thrown by both guys in that fight. I never made an issue of it. Neither guy I thought was intentionally going low. They were hitting hard to the body. Some of the shots for both guys drifted low. I spoke to both of them. They both hurt me. I'd say, Ryan, that shot was low. I'd say, Oscar, you got that was a low shot, so that they understood that I was there for both guys watching. What happened with the point at the end, for instance, was that when you get a fighter sometimes, and I felt this about Klitschko, with the same reason with Klitschko, is that, you got a few rounds in your pocket. You got 3 minutes left. If you hold the guy, you drag him to the canvas, if you lean on him, he doesn't get a chance to work in the last round. You don't need the last round. You don't need it. He needs it. He needs a knockout.
Right.
But you're just going to stop him from fighting for one round. Well, to me, that's trying to gain that advantage. He got 3 more minutes to finish this fight, and you're going to basically make it an 11-round fight. And so you're not going to give him the 12th round. So in that case, I'm going to say, listen, you can't hold this guy. He's coming out here to fight. This is his last hope. You got to fight him for the last 3 minutes, because it's a 12-round fight. You can't basically just hold him for 3 minutes so he can't punch, because he can't win that, right?
Right.
So in that case, and the point, frankly, wasn't that important, because it wasn't changing the result. That kid needed to stop him to win,
Yeah.
So, but I had to give him the chance to stop him. I had to say, you have to have that up. You have 3 more minutes. If you're able to do it, I have to give you the chance, right? So it's just in the vein of leveling the field. You just got to level the field a bit. So if one guy's going to use a tactic that's clearly outside the rules, holdings in if you have two, there's holdings always one of those nebulous things, right? There's a lot of occurrences in boxing where a clinch occurs naturally, organically, right? Guys are punching. I miss you with a left hook. My arm goes around the back of your head. I don't let you go because I'll get hit if I do. So, okay, I was trying to punch and I missed. You were trying to punch and you missed. Then a clinch naturally occurs. But then there's another time when I have 2 free hands and I elect to use both of them to grab you. So that's holding, right? Yeah. I could have punched or I could have moved. I could have done a lot of legal things. I decided to just grab you with both hands. So that's kind of the situation there. But as far as like getting I've been in, I guess, controversies. I don't know. I think it'd be impossible to referee your whole career and not be in controversies. But I don't think I've ever. One of the best sort of occurrences I have, or I would say reassurances, is when a fighter that you referee loses a fight and still wants you as a referee. You know, when he loses a fight with you in the ring and still appreciates the work you did. You know, I think that's, and you know, frequently I've had that sort of thing where a guy was in the ring with me and you know, in a close fight, didn't get the nod and still was appreciative, still wanted to be in the ring with me again in the future, you know. So I think that's like a bigger, that's kind of the biggest sort of compliment you can get as a referee, you know.
Matthew, one of the things that Mike left out in the Arturo Gatti story was he kept taking Arturo to the doctor to get the cut checked in the hopes that Dr. Meunier would stop the fight 5 times, would stop the fight and take the pressure off of him.
Yeah.
And Dr. Meunier said, no, I'm not stopping this in front of, good to go.
Yeah.
Back to the action.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Go.
As I say, you know, I mean, it turned out, I think it was the right decision because the right guy won. But I just think that, yeah, I kept thinking like, you know, I kept looking at that cut and going like, you know, are you sure this is okay? Well, you know, in no instance am I gonna, you know, I had the same situation with Chad Dawson, you know, in the John Pascal fight, which,
yeah,
you know, I did stop, but you know, there's no real, that was arterial damage, you know, that cut was spurting blood. It was like actually kicking out. It was actually, you know, and so there's an artery ruptured there. And, you know, there's no situation where you're going to override the medical professional and say, you know, he says, stop the fight. I say, let it go. You know, I mean, there was no leeway for me there. So, you know, but, you know, certainly in the Arturo thing, and you know, as it turns out, I mean, Arturo was mad at me after that fight too. There was one guy who was mad.
There you go.
Arturo. But, you know, I mean, obviously Arturo wanted me to call it a butt and stop the fight in the second round. You know, that would have been the ideal for him and Lou. That would have been the ideal scenario. That I said that was a headbutt, and you know, they kind of got it wrong on the color because I remember it was Brandt. Is that his name? Rob Brandt from, he was for the Globe and Mail. Do you remember him, Russ? He was doing the color for Tia. Brunt, that's it. Stephen Brunt.
Yeah,
that's right. And he was doing the Canadian color, and it was our friend there from ESPN, Teddy Atlas doing it.
Atlas?
Yeah. And, you know, it shows you how, I'll tell you what, I went to Canastota one year, and inside the Hall of Fame, that fight in the little, you know, the little booth where the actual Hall of Fame is, that fight was playing on a continuous loop in the Hall of Fame. So I went in there, I was like, this is the fight they got going continuously in here. And, you know, the funny thing is sometimes you get the color guys. So I remember, and I was young then, well, younger anyway. And that was kind of the a difficult, like listening to because obviously when you're in the ring, you don't hear the color. So at one point in between rounds, Teddy Atlas looked at me and he said, you know, what are you ruling after the cut? And I held up my fist. So he said, well, you know, he did that. He ruled it cheapest. Well, I didn't rule on the cut. You know, if it's a punch, you don't rule. There is no rule. You don't identify it as a punch. If it's a headbutt, you identify as a headbutt. If it's a punch, fight goes on, right? I mean, you don't say, oh, that bruise was caused by a punch, and so was his sore shoulder. I don't know. You don't identify the injuries on the guy because of a punch. It's a legal blow. So I think that, you know, so, but, you know, and then I had Stephen Brunt saying that, why doesn't Joe Hutchinson just stay down from the low, because Arturo started hitting him low, actually intentionally. I took a point from Arturo for it. But he said, why doesn't he just stay down and win by knockout on the low blow? So clearly he didn't understand. He didn't know the rules of boxing.
Right.
So I'm thinking, why are you telling the television audience, like, at least get the rules? He can't stay down. If he stays down, I'm going to count him out. He can't stay down and win. They were saying, you know, so of course they went to the truck and identified the clash of heads. And then they said clearly that Arturo's cut was caused by that clash of heads. This is the thing that most annoyed me. Not so much because I had gotten out of the house, out of the fight and out of the Molson Center alive. So I was relatively pleased with that result. So, but then when I went home and listened to it, I realized that, you know, it's not like it's sometimes the narrative has got nothing to do with the fight. So, you know, they were saying, well, you know, here's a clash of heads. So they went to the truck and they showed a clash of heads. And I was like, okay, because I saw that. Yeah, that's right. There were several clashes of heads, like many, you know, like Arturo was opening up to punch from the outside and Joe Hutchinson was coming in with the top of his head every time. I mean, it was like perpetual, the clashes of heads. And then they found one in the truck and they said, well, here it is. It was a headbutt. And I was like, okay, but roll it one more frame. Roll it one more frame. There's no blood. The cut has to, you know, cut that size doesn't take a couple of seconds or a couple of milliseconds to bleed. It bleeds instantly.
Right.
It's like you get hit that the blood's there.
Yeah.
I said, you know, there's a clash of heads and there's no blood. He wasn't cut by that clash of heads. But, you know, they have their narrative, they sell it. So, you know, I mean, that kind of stuff early in my career, and that was early in my career, that kind of bothered me. Now I see, even as I said in the documentary, the one night done about Anthony Joshua and Ruiz, I actually straightened out the misconception that, you know, what's his name there that did the ringside stuff?
Sergio Mora, Brian, the zone commentators.
It was Brian Kenny, Sergio Mora, and what's his name? The other fellow there
from Sports Illustrated.
That's right. That's right. All DAZN guys, right? So they were saying at the end of the round that, well, you know, he's given time. And I was saying, but so actually, when I went back to New York and I did the documentary on it by Slice Alone, I said to them, I said, watch the clock in the corner. I said, I got the tap, I got the knock on the floor. 10 seconds. Anthony goes down again. I know now we're out of the round. The round's over. There's no more time on the clock. When I say box, they're going to ring the bell and the round is over. Nobody's getting hit again. They said, well, you know, Griffin's giving him time. He's saving him. He's telling, there was no time. There's two things. Joshua's either going to quit. If he tells me he doesn't want to continue, that's what I want to find out. You want to keep going? First thing I asked him, I said, pick up your hands if you want to keep going. He picked up his hands. I said, okay, you want to keep going? Now I got to make sure he doesn't fall. Because if he starts walking back to his corner and he falls, I got a problem. I got to count him out on now again. And it's only count of one. He's got 1 second to get up if he falls again, because the count continues. So I want to make sure he's on his feet, can walk back to his corner. But I already know we're going into the fourth round. After the round, I said, doctor, go look at this guy. Tell me if he's okay to come out. That was it. For me, there was no decision. So even after they knew that, that didn't suit the narrative of the broadcast. So they wanted to say he was saved by the bell. He got some extra time. He got let to go back. There was no time. It's your clock. You're running. The TV clock's on the screen. I can see it. It says 0. He can't get hit again. So, you know, it's a funny thing, you know, but you get older, you get wiser. They're going to tell a story about the fight. I'm not going to participate in the story of the fight usually, you know. I mean, that's done by other guys. So,
Russ, I don't know.
I actually hate that rule. You know, my brother Marlon Wright was hung with that rule. I said, that's going to hang a lot of referees. It's a terrible rule. You know, we have a rule in boxing that says you can't be saved by the bell. So I said, who wrote that? Because that doesn't sound like a rule. I said, Meldrick Taylor, give me the kid's name.
Julio Cesar
No,
Chavez.
well, yeah, right. Okay. I'll give you another fight. Jermaine Taylor and Kelly Pavlik.
Yeah.
Was Kelly Pavlik saved by the bell? 100% he was saved by the bell. Well, the rule says he can't be. Well, I mean, I don't know. There were 3 more seconds left in that round. He was never getting up.
Right.
But he got saved, right? So the rule says he can't be saved by the bell. What kind of rule is that? The rule should say if a fighter is knocked down within the 3-minute time limit of the round, he must rise before a count 10. That's what the rule should say. And the referee shouldn't have to say box.
Yeah.
Once he gets up, I don't need any reason to stop a fight. I don't have to be within a knockdown, within a round. For instance, if Anthony Joshua gets up at 7, 6, 8, and it's the end of the 3rd round, and I know there's no more time, why doesn't the bell just ring and I send him to his corner? I can still stop the fight. I can go to his corner, look at him 45 seconds later and say, this guy's not okay. I'm stopping this. I don't need the knockdown to stop the fight. I'm going to stop the fight if he's unable to continue. But at that moment, I don't have to protect him anymore because he can't get hit now.
Yeah, makes
He's
sense.
up and the round's over. Why would I don't have to protect him unless his corner is going to come out and hit him, but I doubt that. See, not saved by the bell came from, and Russell, remember this, you know, that's an old school boxing thing where they used to run out and, you know, a guy was like prostrate on the ground and they put smelling salts under him and lift him up and drag him back to the corner and give him smelling salts and send him back out. So we said, okay, you can't save a guy by the bell. He still has to get up. But once the guy's got up, now I don't really have to assess. It's one thing that my mentor, Guy Jutras, taught me very well. And it's one of the things, I mean, we've had an example of it, you know, when the Tyson Fury, the first Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder fight came up, I actually called Jack Reese and I said, thank God for referees who still count. You know, because
that 12th round,
he taught me, yeah, well, I mean, he didn't count, which I actually felt in the last fight that, and I think Russell Moore did a great job, but I'm saying in the last fight, he waved it off as the guy was falling.
Yeah.
But what I was taught, what that didn't give him the same edge that his opponent got in the first fight, right? So Deontay went down. He wasn't, no one checked if he was okay after 6 or 7 count to get up because he was waved off falling. But what I'm trying to say, I'm not saying that wasn't a right call. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is the rules give the fighter a count of 10. The rules also give the referee a count of 10. I have that count to assess what I'm going to do. It's just a time freeze for me. In a world that moves very, very quickly, I get a time freeze. I get those extra seconds to assess. When a fighter's hurt at the end of a round, I don't have to stop it right away. I actually don't have, I can delay my decision I can let the corner work. I can let the doctor look at him. I can get a lot more information before I make that call rather than making it on the spur of the moment. When he gets up, he's got a minute now. And that was kind of the case in Anthony Joshua-Ruiz. I was saying, I got a minute now to assess if this guy should be able to continue or not. Yeah, he's hurt. I can see he's hurt. And clearly he's hurt. You know, they have this thing now, but, you know, walk this way, walk that way. To me, I don't really have to discern if the guy's hurt. I saw him go down.
Yeah.
I was there. I watched him get hit. I know he's fucking hurt. I watched him get hit.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I watched the punch he took when Ruiz went down. Yeah, that was a big punch. I know he's hurt. But there's other things. I watched Ruiz. He didn't do it successfully, but he tried to put his hands behind his back, which shows me that, you know, it's a different kind of knockdown. He knew he was falling. He knew he tried to brace his fall on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, these are things that I'm aware of. I'm saying that guy's probably okay. He's like cognitively, he's functioning. He knew what to do when he was falling. So, you know, other guys just flop like and maybe that guy.
Like Wilder did.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Wilder, the way he looked like John
Yeah,
Tate
the face
almost,
ball.
you know, like,
The face ball is, but of course, Fury went down the same way against him. He looked like
but
he
not
was.
having taken the beating that he took.
That's true.
Not having
That's
taken
true.
the same beating. So, Mike.
No, I'm not saying about. I'm not at all questioning the call that.
No, I know.
Russ Anber did. I think it was the end of the fight. I'm not arguing that point.
Yeah.
You know, what I'm trying to say is there's this rush to make a decision where suddenly time stands still. And for the first time in the fight, I have time to assess this situation, this guy's well-being, the situation. I got, you know, seconds where before I didn't even have seconds. I had to just move. Now I got seconds. I got a guy because now there's no more damage being caused. One guy's over there in the neutral corner, one guy's with me. Nobody's getting hit. I get a couple extra seconds to actually assess what the right move is. You know,
Okay,
what's the best thing to do.
Last question for you.
Yeah, we got to wrap up soon. Rush, just to let you know for the time.
Yeah, that's why I said this. I knew you were going to say that. I looked at the clock and I wanted to ask this last question because Michael said something that is, to me, known throughout the world, except in the UK, that you have a 10 count to get up. You said 10 seconds, but we know it's a 10 count, right?
I never said 10 seconds. Oh, just by the way, I never said 10 seconds. Check the tape. I said 10 count.
10 count. Okay, 10 count. Okay, 10 count. You have a 10 count to get up. In the UK, you have 9. And I've argued with the British Boxing Board of Control over this, and their ruling is their count is 7, 8, 9, and out. And I've told them, no.
Yes, it's
10 and out. You know,
this is an ongoing. I will say this is an ongoing thing.
It's stupid. It's stupid.
And I will say this. You know, I agree with you on that, and I agree with you more on the intent of the thing. I've seen this done, and we've discussed this. You know, I've discussed this with other refs. Look, if a fighter, sometimes you'll see a guy on one knee counting with the ref, and then getting counted out. This is in no one's interest. We're not trying to catch him on a 10 count.
That's
and
right.
The reason I insist on 10 count is that people think there's a correlation. My 8 count, I've timed it many times with a stopwatch to understand how long it is. My 8 count is about 12 seconds. That's about my 8 count. I'm pretty much aware that 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, that's a count. Now, I can do an 8-second count that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. What am I? I'm not trying to count the guy out. It's a 10 count. It's not 10 seconds. So the idea that your count is exact, where you can get a guy with this at 9, is contrary to the spirit of
course.
He's got 10 count to get up. To me, if his knee is off, they say, well, if he's rising, if he's still bent and rising, there's no way I'm ever counting a guy out who's rising and his knees are off the canvas. For what? I caught you? Well, I could have just counted fast. Caught you too. It doesn't make sense.
If he's hurt, he's hurt. You're going to stop it regardless. It doesn't matter. It's not about.
Well, I'm saying for him to beat the count, to me, if before I say 10, his knees are off the canvas, he's beat it.
That's right.
He's beat it. I stopped counting. I now assess him for his ability to continue, and I'm not trying to catch him on the ground. I'm not trying to say, gotcha. You didn't make it.
That's the attitude. Is
That's
I got you.
Great.
9 and out. What do you mean 9 and out?
Yeah.
When there was 10, what 9 and out?
Well, listen, gentlemen, it was an absolute pleasure, Mike, to have you on this evening. I feel like we could have gone, especially with the love and the history and the passion. We'll definitely have to do this again if you're willing to do so, because we could have gone on for hours. And
No, never again, but yeah, for sure.
there you go. Russ, also, what do we pay Russ for the guests on the podcast?
Lunch.
Everybody
eat-out
gets a
burger
pair of
or
boxing
something,
boots.
Lunch, yeah, you're good. Yeah,
Everybody
no
gets a pair of boxing boots.
No, yeah, you already got yours. You already got yours. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Mike?
I got to give one back. But, okay.
Okay, that's what I'll get you lunch.
Perfect. Give us a
Okay.
call, Mike. Thank you so much. We'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening. To us, we'll talk, of course, next week again on another edition of Calling Russ Anber. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and have a good evening, everyone.
And Matthew, you
Thank
were
you.
worried he wasn't going to talk.
I don't know.
That's never happened before. That's nobody's ever said that before.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, guys.